Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching India's World with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. India and Nepal on Thursday agreed to step up efforts to advance mutual cooperation as Foreign Secretary Vardhan Shringla met the country's top leadership and held productive talks with his Nepalese counterpart on a range of bilateral issues. Shringla was accorded a warm welcome on his maiden visit to Nepal at the invitation of Foreign Secretary Bharat Paudyal amid a strain in bilateral ties following a bitter border row between the two countries. He paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli at the latter's official residence. Shringla also called on Nepal's Foreign Minister Pradeep Kumar Gyawali and handed over 2,000 vials of antivirus drug Remdesivir to him as part of India's continuing assistance to the Himalayan nation to help it contain the COVID-19 pandemic. On Friday, Shringla inaugurated 3 schools built as part of India's $50 million assistance for the reconstruction of education sector in Nepal's Gorkha district, the epicenter of the 2015 earthquake. In this edition of India's World, we will analyze the Foreign Secretary's visit to Nepal. Joining me on the program today are Manjeev Singh Puri, former ambassador to Nepal, Shakti Sinha, Director, Delhi School of Public Policy and Governance, and Major General Dhrusi Katoch, retired Director, India Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you. After a brief chill in ties between India and Nepal, they seem to be getting back on
Frank, thank you very much. These are COVID times, and so we are very fond of using the word social distancing. But India and Nepal, the geography and civilizational links are such that there can be no distancing. So I agree with you. There was a chill that lasted several months. But then the Nepalese and the Indian sides have taken steps to try and revive the traditional relationship. And I want to tell you, the Foreign Secretary's visit, I think, went off particularly well. There was good politics and there was good atmospherics. Let me start with the latter. The Foreign Secretary speaks Nepali. Now, you can imagine that for a small country in our neighborhood, when you send somebody who speaks their language and says that in public, what a nice impression it makes. And yes, these are things that matter because people's ties between India and Nepal are extremely important and they guide the way politicians act and react. Secondly, good politics. You yourself mentioned the Foreign Secretary was very warmly received. He called on the President of Nepal. He called on the Prime Minister. He met the Foreign Minister and he met opposition leaders. And he not only inaugurated 3 schools in Gorkha, but let me draw your attention to this, did something else which adds to the India-Nepal connection. He inaugurated the renovation of a monastery in the Manang district of Nepal that borders Tibet on the northern side. And this is yet another very important strand that binds India and Nepal, that of Buddhism. So the interactions were good, they were solid. And what I see is that these should lead to a reset, if one was required, in the relationship, a resumption of high-level talks. And if you would recall, the Foreign Minister has been invited by our External Affairs Minister to come to India for the next meeting of the Joint Commission. All in all, a good augury, a reset, and we are taking things forward. I believe this is the way it should be, and this is important that we are taking things forward, no matter the hiatus which has taken place. Bumps are something which are inherent to the India-Nepal relationship. The complexities are such, but we must always look to try and strengthening the links institutionally between governments, between states, and therefore, as a result, between the people, which is really the bottom line and the most important things between our relations.
Absolutely. All right. Shakti Sinha, let me bring you into the picture then. Mr. Sinha, as far as this visit is concerned and, building on what the ambassador has just said, would you also agree that what we are seeing or what we have witnessed is a resetting of ties and strengthening of institutional mechanism between Nepal and India?
Absolutely. Reset, of course, is a strong word in the sense that it assumes that things had gone completely beyond control. They had not. There were certain precipitative actions on the Nepalese side after the road was inaugurated, a road which we have been using and which is considered part of India. On our side, if you notice, our reactions were very sober. other than one statement by the army chief where he said that Nepal has done this at this year, somebody else, no political leader, no foreign office statement, spokesperson said anything negative about Nepal throughout the period. So we were careful, but I'm glad that in Nepal itself there is the feeling that Nepal cannot put all its eggs in the Chinese basket, and there is a need for Nepal. And this is what we must understand. If Nepal is today reaching out to India and engaging with India, with say the air bubble has now started, etc., we should not think that the Chinese are going away. We should be prepared to accept the fact that in terms of investments and other things, Nepal still feels that China has a very important role to play. And therefore, I think as two mature countries, India and Nepal, we will have ups and downs. Absolutely, as Ambassador Puri was very right. It's inherent that some kind of bumps would be there on the way. We should not get detracted by it. We should remain patient. And I think one good thing which is coming out of this visit and the visit of General Narawane and their army chief, etc., is that the need for continued engagement, particularly at the higher levels, particularly at the political levels. So when the Prime Minister of the country spends time meeting our people, representatives who go there, if our two foreign ministers meet, there's far greater chance of moving ahead, which, after all, let's remember, the reset in that sense started when August 15th, when Prime Minister Oli called Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It has to be a political initiative. And Nepal has shown now, yes, it has taken some actions, but it is slightly, very diplomatically moving out of the way by, say, not pushing the textbooks which had the new maps. Things like that in a small country make a lot of difference because optics are it's not the content, but how do people perceive it? And in that sense, I think this just shows that the two countries would have to continue. We should not be happy with these few visits, etc. We have to continue to build our relationship, sort out the link. Many things will keep cropping up problems. Treat each problem one at a time, sort them out, and move forward as two neighbors with very strong cultural, political, religious, the monastery in Manang that he just mentioned. I mean, we have tremendous things going for each other, and we have to build on them.
Absolutely. There are several positives, of course, that are happening as far as India and Nepal are concerned, and we need to continue to build on that and also take the relationship forward. General, let me come across to you now. As far as China is concerned, China was mentioned at least a couple of times over the last 7 minutes or so. At some point in time, do you expect China to play spoiler and try and come in the way of India and Nepal like it has done in the recent past?
No, I've got absolutely no doubts, Frank, that China will attempt to play the spoiler. It doesn't suit China's agenda that the relationship between India and Nepal keeps getting strengthened. And they have been working very assiduously through their ambassador in Kathmandu towards that end. But you see, the point is, as has been mentioned earlier, the relationship between the two countries, it transcends politics. Because what took place a few months back, when they carried out what I can simply term cartographic aggression, when that took place, I think the relationship went into a cold freeze. And I still don't know how we are going to get out of it, because it has been passed by their parliament, and they will have to go back to parliament to change that map. And I don't see that happening in the near future. But having said that, I think what has now happened is that we are getting out of that cold freeze. And these visits, the 3 visits have been very important. It started off with the visit of Director Raw, then it went on with the visit of the Army Chief. And I consider the Army Chief's visit very significant because there is a very great deal of love between the two countries based on the strong military bonding between the two countries. And then, of course, as has been so correctly highlighted, the visit of the Foreign Secretary now. So the things are moving forward, but they haven't come back to where they were. And I don't expect them to come back to where they were. It doesn't happen that way. So but if we hadn't carried out this discourse, if this forward movement hadn't taken place, then there is no way we can go even further. So I think there is a positive trend, and we should leave it at that. But we need to counter Chinese designs. And the Chinese designs are not just on Nepal. They're on Bhutan. They're on Indian territory in Arunachal. They're in eastern Ladakh. And it is the continued support which China is giving to Pakistan, which is actually waging a proxy war against India. And I feel now it is at China's behest. So as far as our relationship is concerned, I think we need to still be very, very careful. However, I think the biggest positive of all is the people-to-people relationship. And it is this people-to-people relationship, actually, not so much the high-flown visits. It is this people-to-people relationship that has enabled the visit by our three senior officers, and that will actually progress it further. So this is something which we must continue to strengthen. And so long as we do that, regardless of the political differences which will keep taking place, because of the compulsions of the Communist Party within Nepal. It is their compulsions, not India's compulsions, that they actually resort to such statements. But I think if we keep the people-to-people relationship strong, we will be on very firm ground, and nobody, despite China's best efforts, they will not be able to upset that relationship. Frank.
Right. Ambassador, since we are here, then let's bring in that aspect as well and dwell upon that for the next couple of minutes or so. The issue that the General just raised about, the internal rumblings and the internal politics within the Communist Party in Nepal itself. We've seen that come to the fore yet again. There are several media reports doing the rounds that talk about how there could be yet another rift within the ruling political party itself. So how would you look at that, and do you believe that that could have any bearing on our relations with Nepal?
Frank, the polity in Nepal would have appeared to everyone to be very solid behind the Nepalese Communist Party, because they won nearly 2/3 of the seats in parliament in the elections conducted at the end of 2017. But we must remember that this happened as a result of an agreement within that party which was reached. And after about 2 years, the rifts, or should I say the various power plays, are coming to the fore. And we have been seeing this throughout the year 2020. Already, you rightly mentioned, there are reports that those who have not been having the share of the power, i.e. other former prime ministers, Mr. Prachand is one name which is named, are interested in saying that, look, let's meet the ends of our bargain. What do I get after all of this particular thing? These things will always continue to bedevil the polity in Nepal, and I dare say the Indo-Nepal relations, because we must remember one thing. The most important political string to strum in Nepal is that of the India card. The differentiation in identity between India has been the hallmark of the Nepalese defining their nationalism. And politics in Nepal is easiest handled by simply strumming anti-India cards. Now, Mr. Sinha mentioned the army chief statement in May. My own view always was that even then, that much of it that happened because it was expedient for the Nepalese political class, especially the prime minister, to strum this particular card at that particular time. That he overdid it is something that happens. Usually they play small cards and they are able to meet the ends of what they wish to do, a boycott, a small trade restriction, etc. But this time they went really overboard. Maybe he thought the threat was too much, or maybe he was really looking at cementing his legacy as an uber nationalist in Nepal. Remember, the Nepalese Communist Party, especially the older version, the conservative Communist Party, which Mr. Oli came from, does not have with it either the legacy of being the harbingers of democracy, which the Nepalese Congress has, or the removal of monarchy, which Mr. Prachand and his Maoists bring. So everybody looks at something or the other for himself, and it's quite possible that these were the configurations that brought things together. But I am glad that we are now moving things forward, and we are looking at positivity. On China, I just want to make one point. The strong India and Nepal people's links, these are the ones which are not particularly easy for China to do, no matter its strength economically, its infrastructure, building capacities, etc. We have to ensure that these remain strong, and we must therefore nurture the relationship with Nepal. By no means should it ever be taken as for granted, because globalization has meant that not only has Nepal the ability to play the China card, it today has become an integral part of the globalized world. And we therefore need to reckon that it's not just India and our civilization and our people, but the world also which has become players in Nepal. Remember, about 25% of the Nepalese population is overseas doing jobs, and not only in India, but in all parts of the world, including the United States, the Gulf, ASEAN, and so on. So there is a changing reality of Nepal. And we need to remember this and therefore nurture the relationship on a constant basis. I really mean that neighborhood first. And in this case, in my own personal opinion, indeed, Nepal stands at the very top of this particular pyramid, if I may say so.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Sinha. So let's talk about this aspect of Nepalese nationalism as well that the ambassador just spoke about. What should our strategy be? Should we be concerned at all as far as Nepalese nationalism is concerned? Should we react in a particular way? How do we ensure that we take that on?
First, we must understand the compulsions of a small country. Nepal, relatively to India, is a very small country. And the easiest way a small country elite is able to capture the imagination of its people is by pointing to a larger neighbor. So we should not be puzzled with that. I think if you look at any small neighbor against a big neighbor, you would find that this element of anti-ism will always be there. We have to understand that. I'm not saying we'll agree to it. No, not at all. But we have to understand that this will remain there. What do you do with it then? One, of course, is that you open yourself up to more people. In Nepal, as an example, politics essentially has been run out of Kathmandu. The valley has dominated the country completely, politically, socially, economically. And which is why when Manjeev mentioned the 3 schools in Gorkha or the monastery in Manang, this is what India has to really step up. Make your presence felt all over. After all, the very large number of Nepalese working in India, and they are working outside, of course, as you very rightly pointed out, are not people from the Terai, but people from the hills. So they understand the need to be close to India. So we have to bank on that, develop that relationship. And we have been amiss in the past by supporting politicians individually who told you in private, look, we are your friends, but don't mind that we'll abuse you in public. That element of hypocrisy went on for 50 years. So it's not easy to get rid of it. But clearly, we have told them, and you can see it. Therefore, some of these strains that you see now are strains of honesty. But we told them clearly, if you are with us, you cannot be abusing us in public. That will lead to a backlash, and we should be prepared for it. But I think honesty is a far better method of dealing with them, of exposing them to their own people. Ultimately, can you deliver? So if a Nepalese politician cannot deliver, he will definitely point to India's interference. Beijing is very far away, so they love Beijing, because Beijing is thousands and thousands of miles away. We are next door. And therefore, this balancing act that they'll try to do, we have to step up our assistance. Now, the airport at Lumbini, Bhairava actually, near Lumbini, is being inaugurated soon, an international airport or whatever kind it is. We should be seen on the ground all over Nepal being a very, very important development partner. Some of it we have done, electricity. India has now become the largest supplier of electricity in Nepal, more than the generation of the Nepalese Electricity Authority or their private producers. We actually meet 43% of the peak load. But this is a fact not very well known. So in that sense, there's so much more we can do. We are doing it, but we have to politically, at the end of the day, it's politics, politics, and politics. Engage across the things. Nobody is your man, nobody is against you. The moment people are not seen as pro-India, they can actually be more pro-India in that sense.
Right.
Well,
right. All right. Since we are here then, General, how do we further nurture the ties and how do we build on the positives?
No, I think building on the positives, I will still, I'm very firmly of the view that it has to be people to people. You see, the politics follows the people. It is not the other way around. It is not that the politicians are shaping the environment and the people are following it, right? The emphasis has to be on the people and they must shape the politics. Now, what has been said by Mr. Sinha is very right. Their politics has actually vitiated the atmosphere because whenever they get into trouble, they whip up what they call the India card. Now, I think enough is enough. And we've got to tell them, listen, there is no India card which you can play. We are friends, we are brothers. And that is the way we are going to remain. So you cannot get away with this abuse each and every time. And I think the red lines have to be drawn very clearly. At the same time, when we are looking at the people-to-people relationship, I think the emphasis has to be laid on things like schools, on think tanks. The religious thing can be done, but I think it is much more important to look at the grassroots level. If we can look at the primary education, give them support there, look into the internet, look into other people, other contacts, sports. These are the things which I think will make issues very, very strong. Finally, I think it is the army link which is absolutely vital, and this is something which has been appreciated by the Nepalese and by the Indians across the board. And this is something which the Chinese have tried very hard to break, and they have continuously been asking, how do you chaps get along so well? You see, the point which the Chinese don't understand is we get along very well because we are actually one people. We are two countries, yes. Nepal is an independent country, yes, but we are really one people, and we don't have any of those major fault lines. Now, you can't expect that relationship between a Chinese soldier and a Gorkha soldier. It just won't work. But for the Gorkha soldier, it is very natural. If I am in command of Gorkha troops from any part of India, from north or south or east or west, it is just part of the system. You aren't even thinking of it as if it is something different. So I think that is the connect which people have failed to understand. We have to continue to build on that. We have to shape the information environment. I've been making this point, Frank, on your program many, many times. I think this still appears to be a weakness in our system. We have not been able to shape the information environment the way we should face it, the way we should actually work it out. And once we do that, I think we will be on an even keel. My last very simple point, please don't indulge in politics. That is from our side. Whoever gets into power there, don't try to make major power games. Right? They are doing their thing. Let them do their thing. And this should be quite transparent. People should know, okay, whatever is happening is because of us and not because of any action on the part of India. And once we do that, I think the people of Nepal will actually force the politicians in Nepal to behave in a particular manner. Frank.
All right. Time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Frank. Frank, I agree very much on the theory of the angst of the small state, which Mr. Sinha mentioned, and on the fact which General Katot just mentioned. Politics in Nepal is for the politicians, and we have to go along with whoever is the politician there. I have a very simple point to make. Political contacts with Nepal are important. Nepal is a political country. Many of the things that you see, including at the level of the people, get unfortunately influenced by the way politics unfolds itself and the way politics is played. So political contacts, very important. Step up. Cooperation, economic contacts, not just development cooperation. Let me tell you, today, Nepal is doing fairly well in several of the sectors that we think that we can help them. They reach out to Indian companies and get the help as they wish. They also have the money. We need to build up, keep up and nurture the links with the army. I think very important. Most important in my perspective is that we need to keep up strong contacts with Nepal at all levels across the country, and keep at it no matter the fact that downs keep coming. There are plenty of ups. We tend to take them for granted. Don't be mindful of the downs. Keep at it. Nepal is civilizationally important for us. It is strategically important for us. And it is a country which we really must put at the pinnacle of the neighborhood first policy.
Absolutely. Mr. Sinha.
Actually, after that brilliant summing up by Maldepuri, there's very little to add. I completely agree with every word he said. We have to engage with them politically and economically. The fact is that economically, company to company, what are the things holding it back? We have a free trade agreement for a long time, and yet the kind of economic things is still missing. What are the bottlenecks in the way of increasing that? Because once you're tied economically and meshed into each other, you're far better off. And you must make your presence felt irrespective of the political regime, not choosing sides. Whoever is there, you work with them, they will work with you. At the end of the day, even if you play an anti-India card, you'll come back to talking to India because of the very obvious factors of commonality, So, and you must give them that space. They have a feeling at times that you treat them like a small boy, an errand boy. I think that feeling has to go away. You are a sovereign country. We respect your sovereignty completely, and we treat you as an equal. Disparities of size are irrelevant in that sense when you deal country to country, leader to leader.
Absolutely. And General, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Right. Now, after two brilliant summations, very little left for me to do, which is always a disadvantage going last 10. But let me just give 3 or 4 very simple points. One, we are not the big brother. We should be the elder brother. That is as far as India is concerned. Number 2, I think we also need to shape the narrative which is being played out within Nepal. Our efforts to shape that narrative through our own media and through the Nepalese media, I think that is something which we need to work on very, very assiduously. And the last point is, as far as the politics of it is concerned, engage with all the political parties, and whoever wins, well, we will cooperate with that party. I think it really doesn't matter which party is in power in Nepal. India will deal with the party in power because they represent the people of Nepal. Frank.
All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of India's World. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the Foreign Secretary, Shringla, had a very positive visit to Nepal, and we have clearly seen a resetting of ties after a brief chill of a few months as far as the map is concerned. And it seems like India-Nepal ties are on the right trajectory and on the right way forward. What we need to do going forward is we need to nurture the ties and build on some of the positives that we've seen over the last couple of days. We need to ensure that our goodwill is taken to the people as well, and the politicians don't take away anything out of it. We have to be transparent as far as our relationship is concerned, improve people-to-people contact. Let's not forget, Nepal is at the pinnacle of our neighborhood policy, and it is of strategic and civilizational importance to us, and that's something that we should nurture and treasure as well. What we need to do too is engage economically and politically too, and ensure that we clear all the bottlenecks if we have to see the relationship reach newer and greater heights, and that's something that will happen in due course of time. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.